All right, so part 2, my voice is weirder sounding than I thought it was. I'm getting over a cold still, but I've got my tea, a super strong black tea. It's really, really good. I've had so much tea over the last week because my throat's just hurt so bad. And I've got my tissues, and so we'll see how this goes. Partner assured me that I don't look sick. Anyway, same deal as part 1, looking at vegan channels that I haven't engaged with in the past, that are smaller channels, and also still doing the whole strike system through Strikes You're Out, which a lot of you seem to really like. I really like it too. So let's do it. All right, so the first one is Unnatural Vegan versus High Carb Hannah versus Mcdougal by Vegan Health Fitness. He doesn't seem to be active on YouTube anymore. He hasn't posted a video in a couple years, I think. He does have another one about me as well called Unnatural Vegan Angry Hater ? Anyway, the first one is referring to my response to High Carb Hannah. This is several years ago now at this point, about her potato cleanse that she was doing. I thought it was dumb, because cleanses are dumb. And I also said that eating just potatoes and vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, is not sufficient, particularly for someone like Hannah, who at this time was eating a restrictive vegan diet, not eating a lot of fat, eating just mostly potatoes and rice and vegetables, and that doing something like this sort of cleanse, seemed to be just adding insult to injury. So he starts by saying that he understands my view that cleanses are dumb, but he does think that it could be helpful, that going on this short little potato cleanse could be helpful for a lot of people. It could help them to eat healthy, could make eating healthy simpler. But he does think that restricting the diet so much to just potatoes and non-starchy vegetables is kind of unnecessary and may turn people off and even turn some people away from veganism. But they may just turn to other vegans who aren't eating that way. Yeah, as you can see, he really tries his best to see both sides and to understand both sides, which is who does that on YouTube? Nobody. So it's really nice. Yeah, it's really awesome. I don't really have a whole lot to say.
You're worrying about whether or not you get the RDA for selenium or vitamin E in the day is the least of people's worries. Most people are overweight. We have 34% in Australia, 34% of people are obese.
I see what he's saying, but I think this assumes that the only people who would try this, the only people listening to Hannah, are people eating a standard American diet, right? Most people are eating meat and bread. They're getting plenty of selenium. So if they do some sort of potato cleanse for 30 days, even if they're only eating white potatoes, who cares? But those aren't the only people watching Hannah's videos, right? I'm sure there are a lot of people watching Hannah's videos who strive to eat like her or who already eat like her. Again, this very restrictive, low-fat, whole food diet, they may already be lacking in selenium. It's not that difficult to do on a vegan diet if you're not eating bread and nuts, which a lot of high carbers aren't, right? Nuts are high in fat, so they aren't eating very many of those, and many of them prefer to eat less processed grains, like just rice and potatoes. Same for vitamin E. Fatty foods are the best sources, right? Again, we're talking about a low-fat diet. These types of people eating like Hannah, then deciding to go on a potato cleanse because Hannah did it, it's just making an already insufficient diet even worse. Which again was just mostly my point with those videos. The other video from Vegan Health Fitness is basically the same thing. He doesn't like the vegan infighting, but again, he really tries to understand my point of view.
She seems like a pretty rational person. She seems like a pretty level-headed person. She may have some criticisms of Freely and Harley and Vegan Gains and all this kind of stuff, but she's not so much hating on them. She's just holding them to a higher standard, I think.
Again, it's super nice. He does seem a little bit prone to exaggerated claims, similar to the ones I criticize a lot on this channel from vegans, but again, there isn't a whole lot to comment on. It's a shame that he's not around anymore, that he's not making videos. Lawyer takes on Unnatural Vegan by That Vegan Lawyer. It's a response to my video Freely is kind of right about Abby Sharp, but mostly wrong. Speaking of Freely, here is a positive comment on this video from Freely. So probably not a great start. Probably should be strike number 1, honestly.
So there are two main long-term legal objectives for the animal rights movement. So the first is animal personhood, and that is basically that all animals are recognized under the law. They're recognized as individuals with legal personality. The second is inalienable rights for animals. That is rights that can never be taken away no matter what the context or situation.
I don't think personhood or inalienable rights necessarily need to be the goal for the animal rights movement, especially if we're talking about all animals. I think a good argument can be made for personhood for all the other great apes, gorillas and bonobos and whatnot. But oysters? Maybe not. And what would inalienable rights for animals be exactly? What would that look like? Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? I mean, what about animal experimentation for like important medical advances like curing cancer? I mean, I know a lot of vegans think no animal experimentation, period, but not all of us. There are plenty of people involved in the animal rights movement, like Peter Singer, who don't have just a blanket no response to animal experimentation. My point is that I think it's a lot more complicated when we're talking about the legality of animal protection, particularly inalienable rights. You can't just it's not as simple as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it may be that there are always cases where those can be infringed upon, at least when it comes to certain animals. And that basically, like most things when we're talking about ethics, we get down to just the difference between deontology and consequentialism. Obviously, I'm a consequentialist, and pretty obviously from this video, Vegan Lawyer is not. Animals should have personhood and inalienable rights because they should. End of story. And that's just not how I approach things. So no way to really bridge that gap. So moving on.
By aligning herself as vegan, yet repeatedly excluding animals from discussions of moral, social, and political equality, Swayze of Unnatural Vegan and apologist laggards like her reinforce an ideology of human supremacy and act as one of the major obstructions to these two paramount objectives.
In general, humans are more important than non-human animals. We're more important because we have a higher level of sentience and consciousness, just like a cow is more important than a bee, and a bee is more important than a worm. It's all a matter of degree, of gradation. And to deny that, I think, is to come to a pretty troubling conclusion, right? That, it's wrong to, kill a worm to save 1 billion innocent people. Do you believe that letting 1 billion innocent people die to avoid killing a worm is the right thing to do? Because if not, then you probably support the ideology of human supremacy, whether you want to admit it or not.
At this stage, asking for reforms and improvement in treatment of animals just isn't enough.
On what basis? Why is asking for something even more implausible going to be more effective? Why is alienating allies who agree with animal welfare a good idea? Why would any reasonable person agree that it's right to let 1 billion people die to avoid crushing a worm? Because a vegan lawyer says so, I guess.
It's people like Swayze and Abby who reinforce the commodity status of animals, which affects public opinion and consequently prevent these important legal reforms from ever happening.
Strike number 1, I do not condone the treatment of animals as commodities. I have explicitly talked about how doing so inevitably results in corners being cut in order to maximize profit at the expense of the animal's well-being. I've even talked about cases like having a backyard hen, right? Rescuing a backyard hen and taking care of them and consuming their eggs, and how I see no issue with that as long as the hen does not become a revenue source, right? As long as those eggs are not being sold. The moment you treat an animal or what it produces as a commodity, you bias yourself into devaluing them and ignoring their interests for your own personal gain. In multiple videos, I've talked about this, that the commercial commodification of animals is the main cause of unintentional harm to these animals.
Human supremacism is the most dangerous ideology on the planet, and by far is and has always been the biggest threat to animal rights.
Human supremacism would only dictate that animals should have fewer rights than humans, or less pressing rights when compared to humans. It's not at all a threat to the common understanding of animal rights that people have, which is that animals should have some rights. What is a big threat to animal rights is the belief that animals don't have any moral value, which people have a lot of reasons for. I mean, obviously they're very invested in this. Everyone wants to keep eating meat. Anyway, there are a lot of bad excuses. I talk about 10 of them in this video.
It is an ideology which unites animal eaters and people like Unnatural Vegan who identify as vegan, but in reality do not embody or speak its core principles and values.
Strike number 2. Nothing about veganism dictates the absolute and deontological form of animal rights that Vegan Lawyer is advocating for. Nothing about veganism means believing all animals should have legal personhood or inalienable rights. You could be vegan, you could embody and speak its core principles, but you could also believe that the government has no place in deciding like moral value as it pertains to animals. So you believe it's wrong to eat animals, you believe it's wrong to support factory farming, but you believe that factory farming should remain legal. You'd be wrong, but you'd still be vegan. A huge number of popular vegans and advocates are consequentialists. We are concerned about reducing animal suffering, and to the extent that they exist on this planet with us, that they live happy and fulfilled lives. Nothing about that necessity requires personhood or inalienable rights, and I think that this rather extreme take on animal rights, on the animal rights movement, is more likely to stand in the way of that end goal rather than further it.
Human supremacy is basically the idea that humans are superior to all non-human animals, and as a result, the exploitation of non-human animals is either embraced or excused by people like Swayze.
I'm going to be charitable. I'm going to assume that there's just like a misunderstanding here, specifically when we're talking about the terms use and exploitation. I'm going to assume that she equates the two. Use is abuse, right? I do not. I believe you can use an animal or even a person without exploiting that animal or that person. You can adopt a hen for companionship, for eggs even, and still provide a loving, caring environment for that animal. I fail to see how that's exploitative. It seems mutually beneficial to me. The animal has a nice, loving home, a family, and you have a new friend and some food as well. Or maybe that's not what she's talking about. Maybe she's referring to videos like this one where I talk about reasons why it may be really hard, if not impossible, for some people to stay vegan. In this case, talking about like really significant food allergies, food intolerances. But that's not an excuse, right? That's like a valid justification for not being vegan or for not being vegetarian. I have a whole video on valid justifications. Check it out.
We need to destroy or transform, it really doesn't make a difference to me, these apologists, pacifists, welfarists, speciesist, human supremacists, intersectional weirdos, into proper educated abolitionist activists for the animals.
I'm not an intersectionalist. I don't know where she's getting that from. I definitely value like focused single cause activism. I don't think that we have to advocate for a bunch of different causes, you know, in our activism. You could call me like intersectional light, I guess, because I don't think that we should be working against other causes in our activism, right? Something like PETA and their fat shaming bullshit. But that's not really intersectionality. That's just not being an asshole. Can we just not be assholes? Cool. So at around 7 minutes, she says that I make this specific claim in my video that illegality determines whether an immoral act can be equated to another immoral act. And she shows this clip from my video as proof. Freely does this throughout the video, implying or even kind of directly stating that Abby Sharp is a bad person, that she's evil for promoting animal products and for taking money to do so. I've talked about this ad nauseum on this channel, so I won't harp on it too much, but basically, humans are complicated. You know, eating meat is not like killing a human or doing some other sort of heinous act that is illegal. Of course, Freely equates the two in this video.
Just think, rape-free Mondays, pedo-free Thursdays.
It is not illegal to eat animals. Most people do so.
Swayze distinguishes the immoral act of...
And here's the full thing for a little bit more context. It is not illegal to eat animals. Most people do so. Most people eat animals in some places, like in the US, several times a day. Doing what everyone else does and thinks is okay does not make Abby a bad person. It makes her a normal, mostly good, but still flawed person. So yeah, strike number 3, I was very clearly referring to character, specifically Abby's character. Going out of your way to violate social norms by like murdering somebody, to risk going to jail for it, you know, doing something that everyone knows is a really horrible, really bad thing to do, is obviously a lot different than being complicit in like a default immoral practice like eating meat, right? Doing something that everybody does and that most people think is perfectly fine. It's like owning slaves today versus when it was legal to do so. You have to be a real special type of psychopath who just really wants a slave despite the consequences. You have to go out of your way to kidnap someone, to enslave them, and to like try not to get caught. When slavery was legal, it was just a thing that people did. I'm sure a lot of people didn't think much about it at all. They may have even inherited their slaves from their parents. It's so easy for people today to say like, oh, I never would have owned slaves. I would have been an abolitionist. Just like one day it'll be very easy for our descendants to say, oh, I never would have eaten animals. I would have been an abolitionist. Most of us go along to get along. It doesn't make us evil. It makes us normal, decent, but significantly flawed human beings. The next video is Vegan Gains and Unnatural Vegan Are Trolls, My 2 Cents in 2 Minutes by Vegan Sista. That's just, I'm white, you know, it happens. She doesn't make any claims other than that both Richard and myself made videos on like intersectionality or social justice or whatever because it was trendy, that we don't understand what we're talking about and that we should listen to people who do, but she doesn't explain like what we don't understand. So yeah, not much to comment on, but I will take time to explain why I delisted my videos on intersectionality. I had 3 of them, I think. I delisted them like, I don't know, a year ago now at this point, maybe longer than that. There are a few reasons, but the primary one is that I don't think there are very many people who even know what intersectionality is or understand it at all, including a lot of the people advocating for it. I think it's like a few people in academia, a few people on Twitter who are aggressively promoting the purist concept of intersectionalism, and the belief that like single cause activism can never be effective. I think most people now are just talking about intersectionalism as a way to be sensitive to the situations that people face. And, you know, this is the nuance I tried to convey in my videos, but I don't, like, most people didn't get it, which probably means that I did a poor job of conveying it. Anyway, since the radicals probably aren't having much of an influence on how most people are using and thinking about intersectionalism, what's the point in even discussing what the radicals think about intersectionalism? Like, what's the point in even platforming ideas, even if it's to criticize them when nobody even knows about those ideas? Intersectionality light, what I talked about earlier, kind of, you know, don't be an asshole in your activism type thing, is obviously winning, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It was people like Reggie Flowers who really made that clear to me when he said that he had no idea what like academic intersectionality was about. The thing that confused me is, you know, why are all of these people who are promoting intersectionality talking about Crenshaw and recommending people read Crenshaw when clearly none of them have? I guess it's kind of like, you know, certain Christians telling atheists to read the Bible even though they haven't read the Bible. Like, is it just something people say? Or maybe it's just a way to shut down an argument when you don't really know what you're talking about, right? I mean, a lot of Christians don't really understand Christianity at all, and a lot of intersectionalists don't really understand intersectionality. Maybe that's why people like Vegan Sista refuse to explain what it is we're missing about intersectionality. They don't really know. They know they should, you know, intersectionality feels right to them, sounds right to them, but they don't really understand it, so they can't explain it. So they tell us to just do our own research, that they shouldn't be responsible for us learning about this, that we should do it on our own time. Convenient, I guess. It's kind of like new atheists criticizing Christianity, like saying, according to the Bible, you're supposed to be stoning people when they work on Sunday. It's like, okay, but if nobody's doing that, maybe that's not what Christianity is about anymore. Although, then why do Christians keep telling us to read the Bible? And why do the Old Testament laws about homosexuality still hold sway, but others don't? Point is, people pick and choose, and what something is in theory isn't always what it ends up being in practice. Even if the people practicing it insist up and down that it is and that the theory is perfect. And then they accuse you of not being nuanced when you try to make that distinction. Okay, sure. Finally, as Vegan Sista says in her video,
the reason talking about social justice is trendy right now is because, well, we have a president who has made comments about grabbing women by the pussy. We have a president who has made an executive order that directly affects Muslims.
I do think this matters. The reality is, you know, most of the people who are ardently like anti-intersectionality, anti-social justice in general are like alt-right, and they will use videos like mine to justify their beliefs. I just don't want to provide material for people to reference, for people to take out of context, particularly in the current political climate. Oh, I also referenced some people like Christina Hoff Sommers. I should have done my research. I didn't know at the time. You know, I think she's a pretty bad faith actor, honestly. So yeah, if I were to do it again, I would never use her as like a source, as like a positive source. Yeah. Okay, next video is Unnatural Vegan is canceled by Vegan Cronish. Going by the thumbnail and the fact that we have another positive comment from Freely, yeah, you probably know what you're in for. And that's strike number 1. I never said that leather boots are fine to buy. I talked about this in part 1 already. I just don't see it as nearly as big of an issue as focusing on food, right? Where people are eating meat, cheese, milk, often multiple times a day. You know, if you're buying leather boots, particularly if it's work related every few years, it's just obviously not the same thing. And some people just cannot afford the alternative, or the alternative is just not as good of quality, which I have heard from a lot of people that, you know, they need good, sturdy work boots for their job, and they just can't find that in vegan alternative, in the plastic alternatives. Hopefully we'll see more high quality, you know, vegan materials and vegan construction. But as of now, faux leather vegan options are still synonymous with poor quality materials and cheap construction. And look, it's not clear if, you know, wearing out several faux leather boots over, you know, a few years is better than buying one pair of leather boots that lasts several years. At least in environmental terms, it may even be worse. Point is, buying leather is not fine or okay. Obviously, it's supporting a cruel industry, but I just don't think it's a huge issue that vegans and vegan activism should be focused on. And buying leather when someone needs to for a job does not make them not vegan.
And what vegan dedicates videos to try and debunk vegan documentaries promoting the vegan lifestyle?
Strike number 2, these documentaries aren't promoting the vegan lifestyle. First, if he really cares about the lifestyle aspects, these movies have nothing to say about like leather or animal testing. Unlike something like Earthlings, What the Health and others really only pay lip service to animal ethics, which is what the vegan movement is really about. Second, they're not advocating the vegan diet either. What the Health, Forks Over Knives, they are advocating for a very specific form of a vegan diet, a low-fat, high-carb, more restrictive vegan diet. And they're doing it with pseudoscience.
What vegan thinks, you know, I'll order food and when it comes back wrong and it's got animal products in it, I'm going to eat them. I mean, any vegan would find that repulsive and disgusting, but she's like, whatever, if they mess up my order and give me meat or dairy, I'm just going to eat it.
Strike number 3, he makes it sound intentional, like I'm planning for my order to come back wrong. Obviously, I'm not planning for that to happen. If I thought that were going to happen, like if I thought that eating at a certain establishment would result in me getting cheese or meat or something, I wouldn't eat there. Also, I've never eaten meat from like a botched order. That's never happened to me, and I don't think I could if it did happen to me. Not saying that it would be wrong to do so. You know, the damage has already been done. There's no point in wasting it. I'm just saying, like, personally, I don't think that I could like physically eat meat. I think that would make me sick. But yeah, I've only ever been served dairy accidentally. There was some cheese at Taco Bell. There was some feta. I remember at a salad place, I asked for tofu. And as soon as it got to the table, it was like, that's feta. Yeah, those are the only 2 I can think of. And yeah, it sucks, but you know, accidents happen. Last video, Unnatural Vegan lies endlessly about antinatalism by Superhuman Dance. So strike 1 from the title. I'm not lying about anything like that. Okay. And wow, that thumbnail, that's something else. If I'm mistaken about something, then feel free to correct me and provide some evidence for your claims, you know? No need to be a dick. That's all I'm saying.
In this video, we're going to be addressing Unnatural Vegans video. I was wrong. She covers 3 different things. One of them is antinatalism. Quickly, the argument for David Benatar's position, we'll just try to summarize it in a couple seconds, maybe a minute here. Coming into existence is always a serious harm, and simply not coming into existence is never a harm.
Strike number 2, that is not Benatar's asymmetry. Benatar acknowledges that pleasure is good and that some lives could be more good than bad. What he claims is that there's an asymmetry when it comes to comparing pleasure and suffering to the absence of pleasure and suffering. He says if somebody exists, then pleasure is good and pain is bad. But if somebody does not exist, then the absence of pain is a good thing, but the absence of pleasure is not a bad thing because there is nobody to be deprived of it. It's a word game. You can just flip it around. If somebody doesn't exist, then the absence of pleasure is a bad thing, but the absence of pain isn't a good thing because there's nobody there to suffer from it. Or you can stop playing word games and be consistent in like any number of ways. If somebody doesn't exist, then the absence of pleasure is a bad thing and the absence of pain is a good thing. If somebody doesn't exist, then the absence of pleasure isn't a bad thing because there's nobody to be deprived of it, and the absence of pain isn't a good thing because there's nobody there to suffer from it. Neither of those consistent phrasings result in an asymmetry. If you want to believe in Benatar's asymmetry, then you'll believe in it, but it's not a real argument. And asserting the opposite asymmetry like I did earlier, you know, claiming the absence of pleasure bad, but the absence of pain, you know, not good, not a good thing. Yeah, that's an asymmetry that could compel procreation.
Pleasure does exist, and so does harm, though, and they're attached inevitably together. So why then would you make more people so that they could be harmed? You can enjoy all those things during your life, all the pleasures that are very important to remain a sane person, and you can just not contribute to the inevitable harm of being born.
He's missing like the whole point of Benatar's asymmetry, but whatever. Let's address what he said. Yes, there are good things and there are bad things. Some people think that there are more good things than bad things. Some people like existing and are glad to have been born. Some people want their children to experience those good things too, despite the bad things mixed in, precisely because the good outweighs the bad. And for most people, having kids, having a family is one of those good things. It's one of the biggest, most bestest good things for a lot of us. It's not bringing people in existence in order for them to be harmed. It's bringing people into existence so that they can enjoy existing, shitty stuff and all.
There's appeal to popularity, like just because a bunch of people don't care about something means that it's not good or true or correct. If you were to apply this same logic that you're using right now to veganism, you would have to say that, well, most people don't care about veganism, so I just don't think that it's super valid. It just doesn't matter. They just don't care. So, since they don't care, that means the argument just doesn't, just me debunking the argument. No, it's not.
And that's strike number 3. He's referring to this I Was Wrong video from 2016, where I say that I regret not mentioning Benatar in my video on antinatalism. The reason I didn't is because the point of those videos wasn't really to go through antinatalist arguments because, number one, most people don't know what antinatalism is. I think most vegans don't know what it is, and most people don't really care. And number 2, the point of the video was really just to kind of bring some sort of support, I guess, to all of the vegans with children, because there were so many videos, from Freely and Durian Rider and Vegan Gains and I feel like a few others as well, just talking about not only why they don't have children, which is totally fine, but why you shouldn't have children, and completely alienating a lot of people. That was really the point of the video. So I didn't really see the need to go through Benatar's arguments. Benatar has been debunked a lot by a lot of different people, and the asymmetry argument is really ridiculous. So I didn't really see the point to bring up something that most people didn't even know what it was and didn't really care. I wasn't making an appeal to popularity. I was making an appeal to, I don't think my audience cares about Benatar or the asymmetry argument, and it's been debunked so many times that it's not worth discussing, and I don't want to just bore people. That if that's a fallacy, I'm very sorry. It's my channel, and I make content that I like, but also that I think my audience will be interested in. There's lots of stuff that I'm not gonna cover on this channel, and yeah, that's kind of it. Moon landing, real or a hoax? That's my next video, y'all. Get ready. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, support the channel, get yourself a shirt if you like, and I will have a new video hopefully very soon. I don't know what I'm doing next, so if you've got any video suggestions, leave them down below. If you want to see another one of these, let me know down below as well. Hey, my hair is pretty much back, I think. And it's been about a year. That's what happened last time, I think, with toddler, right? So I noticed that my hair was like looking a little thin around 3 months, something like that, after they were born. And then by about a year, everything was pretty much back to normal. And pretty much the same thing happened this time. I think it was maybe like 2 months, but where I noticed, but that's because I was like hyper aware and paying attention, and I noticed that I was losing more hair, and it's like, oh God. And I'm still just so aware of like hair loss. It sucks. That is not something I ever thought about before having kids. I never paid attention to like how much hair I'm losing in the shower or whatever. And now, like even now, sometimes I'm like, oh, is that more? Is that more than usual? Like, should I count the hairs? It sucks, but I don't know. It's just such a horrible feeling to just run your fingers through, and it's just, oh no, there's my hair. It's just awful. But yeah, I mean, I don't even lose that much. It wasn't even that bad. And like I said, it's only for a few months, and then it's back, but yeah. It sucks. I'm glad it's back. And I've got some more gray hairs, at least in the front, that I've noticed. I've got like one here, and I've got another one here that's always doing its own weird little thing. The texture is like totally different. It's all coarse and weird. Oh, and I think I've got like a few going on right here, I think. I think that's one. Oh, I think that's another one. Oh shit, is that one too? Yeah, that doesn't bother me. Getting gray hairs, it's kind of cool. It's like someone else's hair. It feels different. It looks different. It's kind of cool. Now, once I'm getting like lots of them, I'm sure it'll be sad. But for right now, it's just like, I feel like Storm. Or not Storm. No. Wait. Storm just had the full gray. Yeah? Didn't one of them have like a streak or something? Right? Like they got hurt. I don't know shit about X-Men. I never liked those movies. But Halle Berry, she's so pretty. And I guess gray's cool now. Is it still cool? Since like St. Vincent made it cool? Maybe it wasn't her, but that was the first person I can remember seeing, like a younger person with gray hair. I was like, what? That looks awesome. And then I saw like all these young, like 20-something-year-old girls with gray hair, and like some of them can pull it off and it looks really cool. So hopefully that's still around by the time I've got like a full head of gray.